Welcome to this SERA presentation. My name is Corina Kaul, and this is Cece Lively. We are here to talk about our research study, Understanding Student Attrition in an Online Doctoral Program. This is a Convergent mixed method study. I'm going to turn this over to Cece now.
Thank you so much. Okay, so the purpose for our study is just that online graduate programs are exploding. Of the 3 million graduate students at institutions that receive federal financial aid, 62% of them are enrolled in a graduate distance education program. And so it's safe to say that the growth of distance enrollments has been relentless, increasing for the 14th straight year. So specifically related to doctoral attrition and retention, here's what we know. Retention to completion says that approximately 53% of students in the social science and humanities programs completed a PhD within 10 years. On the attrition side, in those social science and humanity PhD programs, the largest percentage of those students, 15% of them, drop in the first 3 years. And researchers cite that between 50 and 70% of attrition in online doctoral programs, but there's not an original source that we can find. Researchers are citing other researchers, which is great. There's great numbers there, but finding that original source has been difficult. The problem here is overall the cost of attrition, the cost to students, the cost to the university, the cost to the department, and what does it do to all of those different areas? When we talk about retention in distance education, here's some things we know. Ivankova and Stick did a great amount of research, and they found factors that were associated with persistence. So the online learning environment, is it convenient, flexible? Are students having the appropriate technology skills to be successful in that area? When it comes to support, there are things internal to the program. So is there faculty support? Are there peer mentoring relationships? Are there student support services or academic support services that students can turn to? And then also external to the program. So what does their family support look like? What does their employer support look like? Student self-motivation is another large factor. So are students taking responsibility for their education, their love of learning? Also, they have extrinsic motivators. So does pay have a part in all of this? Career advancement, recognition, etc. And then the quality of those academic experiences. Are students in engaged learning environments? Is the structure conducive to that? Are they taking relevant coursework? Is it challenging? So those are things related to retention. Now, let's talk about the reasons for some of this doctoral student attrition that we found. So Willis and Carmichael stated some of those reasons for lack of persistence or attrition included low self-efficacy, navigating that dissertation phase. What does that look like? Feelings of isolation, lack of peer integration or peer support, finances, lack of advisor support, and then overall that the program might not match their ultimate goals. So theoretically, we're trying to tie this to Kember's model of student progress. So students with academic mismatch and external attributions are more likely to have lower GPAs and fall out of the program. Students will persist as long as they have the perceived benefits showing as outweighing the cost. And Terrell and et al.'s a grounded theory from a scholar to a researcher, community of practice, talks about structure and the supportive faculty and peer interaction or peer mentorship being crucial specifically towards the dissertation phase. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Kaul.
Okay, so the methods, we'll talk about the methods for conducting this research. So the purpose of this program is this is a convergent parallel mixed methods research, and we are examining characteristics of former EDD graduate students and what are their stated reasons for discontinuing. That leads us to 2 research questions. Those are, now first, what are the characteristics associated with the former students? We're talking about general demographic characteristics. And secondly, what are former students' reasons for discontinuing and information surrounding that? The program that we are talking about is an online EDD program. This is a 3-year program based on a cohort model using a prescribed course sequence. One distinctive about this is that the problem of practice dissertation is embedded in this 3-year coursework. And another distinctive is it reflects a partnership between Baylor University and 2U, who helps facilitate the coursework. From this, you can just see we are now past. This research includes the first 6 cohorts, so one every trimester, beginning of fall of 18. If you look down at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see overall we are at an 82% retention rate. Overall demographics of the program, as common in higher education, females are slightly overrepresented compared to males at 60%. And racial demographics, there is almost 40% white, about 30, slightly over 30% African American, and close to 20%. Actually, a little less than that, identify as Mexican Americans, Hispanic. And then we'll then proceed into the results that answer those research questions. So again, the first question was retention. And what do those people look like? Before we get to that, I wanted to just talk a little bit about retention in general. There are multiple phases, and different people might classify retention differently, like when does a student truly begin? Obviously, more people are always admitted to graduate programs than actually enroll. Others enroll, but might drop before ever engaging in coursework. And if we're to look at those who engage in coursework in our Baylor EDD program, the vast majority of our students drop in the first semester. The vast majority of those who drop, not the majority of students overall. Let me clarify on that. So of those who drop, the vast majority drop in the first semester. According to 2U records, we have an 86% retention rate of students who begin and then persist and enroll in the second term. And there is no difference in persistence by race, meaning all are essentially the same. So then we took a subsection of that and we sent them a Baylor Exit Questionnaire. And that questionnaire was provided to, well, 27 actually answered that questionnaire. Of those, not surprisingly, 74% reflected responses of those who dropped in the first term. Again, recall those, that's where we experience the most attrition of those who decide to drop. The remaining 26% dropped after term 2. If you look at the demographics of those who responded to the exit questionnaire, you see that females are slightly overrepresented and compared to males in the overall program. Then by race, essentially that's pretty similar to the overall demographic of the whole EDD program. Then we asked, why do participants discontinue? This chart table actually provides discontinuing in terms of 2 different data gathering points by 2 different entities. So the 3 columns on the left are the Baylor responses and the ones that we are going to focus on. And the column on the right-hand side are 2U responses. Okay, the Baylor responses, as I've already said, we had a sample of 27. I'm going to just talk about the top 4 reasons that our participants stated for discontinuing the research. Those top 4 reasons account for 76% of the stated reasons. Okay, so 26% of our participants, the number 1 reason overall for discontinuing is family obligations. Secondly, that is followed by personal reasons. Third, health concerns, and 4th, emotional distress. Again, those 4 reasons accounting more than 75 or top 74% of the overall reason people discontinue. This is slightly different than the 2U responses, as we didn't collect that or know much about that. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, then as we've said, we already know that there is a high high attrition during the first term. 2U has said that is across universities, and we are very similar in their programs in the amount of attrition that we face. So then let's drill down on those who retain past the second term. Let's figure out what might be interesting characteristic about them. So those have responses for why they retained. All six of the seven indicated that they had a great EDD experience. They would say it was great, it was amazing, phenomenal support, etc. But they were withdrawing for reasons. They are personal reasons, emotional distress, family concerns, and finances. So of those, you predominantly the first three are outside presumably of the program and related to circumstances in the individual's life. The last one, finances being something related to the program. One of the seven was dissatisfied with the quality of the program, and it didn't fit where that individual saw themselves going. Okay, we also asked, what actions did you take prior to withdrawal? Was there anything that you did to try and prevent, mitigate, or keep you from succumbing to discontinuing the program? 44%, so almost half of our participants indicated they did not take any actions. They just made the decision to withdraw. Of those who did something, okay, the 37% of our total sample said they talked this over with their student success advisor. 22% discussed their reasons with faculty or program administration to try and brainstorm different ideas that could be done. 7% contacted financial aid about their need for additional funding, and 7% took other actions. So could our program have prevented dropping of these students? Over half said no. There was nothing that the program could have done to prevent dropout. Of those who indicated there might be something that could have prevented it, one person talked about wanting kind of like an a la carte program where instead of prescribed sequence of coursework, they could define what they wanted to investigate. Okay, 3 individuals talked about things related to finances. If it were cheaper, if I received scholarships or grants to make it more affordable. Again, reasons to make to deal with the financial aspects. Another individual said that they were really looking for an online program with more flexibility. What was implied in their statement is that their coursework would be all asynchronous, that they would not have a weekly synchronous component. 2 individuals talked about time commitment or academic rigor being more that they expected. And 1 individual had 1 semester that really did them in, and that was the semester where they were writing their literature review and taking statistics. And they just felt like that was a bad combination for them specifically. Finally, 1 person took responsibility and said, well, if I would have had sought help at the beginning of the term, I would have been able to buckle down. So in conclusion, in summary, we see demographically that females might be overrepresented in discontinuing. Connecting it to other research, it might be also thinking about the reasons cited, family obligations being the number 1. Oftentimes, women have more responsibility for things occurring at home, so that could be one reason why our females are more overrepresented in discontinuing the program. However, we are pleased to see that retention appears to be evenly distributed across race, no race being more impacted than another. Okay, internal factors. There were very few actually internal factors that the program had related discontinuing. Although literature talks about many factors related to a program, the only 2 that were mentioned by our participants related to financial and incongruence with student goals. But again, those really accounted for a very small percentage of why individuals said they were leaving the program. Predominantly recall individual factors like family obligations, health, emotional distress, and personal reasons were again accounting for 3/4, presumably all of those being outside of the scope of the EDD program. Okay, limitations. Limitations as our theoretical model, although it makes sense conceptually and intuitively, additional research outlined by Woodley et al. Indicates, well, empirical research does not support the theoretical model. Secondly, there is very little research on online graduate programs with synchronous aspects. Specifically, there is even much less research related to EDD program retention. The only one that we could find on this initial was to look at that one, Ivankova and Stick. Outside of that, there wasn't much. Then we also have to talk about growing pains. There's growing pains for 2U, there's growing pains for Baylor University. You saw the, if you went back and you looked at that table, we are just exploding in terms of numbers with a new cohort being added 3 different times a year. As you can imagine, that presents itself with a whole bunch of opportunities. And with those opportunities comes things that have to be dealt with immediately. And as such, as you might imagine, creating and maintaining data, it ranks lower on the list of priorities. So thus, the data is not to the degree, the clarity of it is not to the degree that we might have under slower, more methodical growth. Secondly, data reconciliation with 2U. 2U produces reports, we produces reports. It appears in some instances we use the same terminology, but might have different meanings for the terminology. Also, the methods of tracking changes has evolved. Again, growing pains, this is a new program. So it evolves on both sides. It evolves on the Baylor side as well as the 2U side. And then lastly, there was a limited sample of those who discontinued that responded to the research. So perhaps if we would have every single person respond, the results might be different than the results that we have presented here. And where does a researcher go from there? They think about what would they do next? Well, what would we do next? We talk about, it'd be very interesting to really drill down, to look at each of the stages where people could discontinue and see what might be different or what might be similar to those who discontinue or retain at each level. So what is distinctive about those who say they accept to the program, but they discontinue before registering, or after registering, but maybe only attend, but never attending a class? Or what about those who register and attend past the census date of the first semester, so 2 weeks or later, and discontinue after that, and then sometime after semester 2? As we call that 2U, and we're aware that attrition in the first semester is the highest. Is there a difference between those who drop soon and those who retain and drop later? Those would be all areas that we are curious and would like to know more with using future research. So with that, that concludes our presentation. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to contact either one of us. And our email is our first name _ last name @baylor.edu. Thank you.
Thank you.